Welcome to Your College-Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a weekly deep dive into the world of college admissions.
My name is Dave. I'm a parent of a daughter in college, and we live in Chicago, Illinois.
I'm Lisa, and I'm a clinical psychologist and college counselor. I have a daughter in college, a daughter in high school, and a son in middle school. After 30 years in Chicago, we recently moved to North Carolina.
My name is Mark. I'm a college coach in Atlanta and the parent of two daughters. Karis, a graduate of Davidson College, and she is the founder of the Spanish tutoring company, SpanishHelpToday.com. And Joy is a graduate of the University of Georgia, and she is getting her master's degree at North Carolina State University. Good morning, friends. And before we dive into today's episode, I do have a correction to make thanks to a very astute listener, a college counselor, noted something I said incorrectly in episode 310. I talked about how you can use collegedata.com in the financial tab to find the tuition discount rate for schools. And while there's a lot of great information there, I should have said the financial statements is the best place to go to get the tuition discount rate. So I just love our listeners. You're so sharp. And if I make one error, you catch it. And I love it because one, really important that we're accurate. And two, just absolutely keeps me on my P's and Q's. So for today, pretty straightforward episode. We're going to have a Speakpipe question that was sent in. It's actually a follow-up question that was sent in a while ago about whether ninth graders should start prepping for the SAT, and then we're also going to have a final part of our interview with Initialview, the educational tech company that's helping colleges discern whether applicants are authentic and who they claim to be. Lisa, I am super excited today. Guess one reason. I bet you won't get it.
Oh, well, it's really hard when someone starts. I already feel defeated. I don't even want to guess. You're getting a puppy. I don't know.
That would not do it. You don't know about my dog aversion.
Oh, really?
I got bit in the face when I was 9 years old. So I had a paper route when I was 9 years old. And this dog named Blackie jumped up and bit me in the face. And ever since then, no, I don't do dogs. Okay. And then when I used to be in outside sales, sometimes I would, have a suit on. And sometimes I would visit these owners where they had dogs and they would jump on me with it. So anyway,
okay,
you didn't know that about me.
Puppy for Christmas.
No, please don't.
But I have to say, not all dogs. I understand Blackie did you wrong.
He scarred me.
Yeah, no,
he gave me PTSD.
Probably. Yeah, no, I totally get that. I understand. There are some nice dogs out there. So
I know. Both my brother and sister have them. So it is because I get to do a session with your daughter, Sonia.
Oh yeah. See,
you guys don't know this, but Lisa has really awesome kids, and I started. She gave that look like I live with them 24/7. But so Sonia and I are starting to do a little mild college prep, and she's pretty awesome. So I can't wait to do that session.
Yeah, I think it'll be really helpful just to kind of finalize her schedule for next year and just kind of talk about where she's at with her extracurriculars. So I'm appreciative of your willingness to work with her.
Oh, it's fun. But let's dive in. We got, what do we got today?
Well, we have a comment/question from Rebecca from Florida.
Hi, this is Rebecca from Florida. I just listened to the question on episode 303 about a ninth grader in Algebra 2 and when to take the SAT. This could have been my question, and I just felt compelled to call in with my perspective. So I'm in a lot of college admissions type Facebook groups, and it's often suggested by other parents that students take the SAT as soon as possible after Algebra 2, since it's the highest math seen on the test. A lot of kids who are in advanced math classes are in calculus by their junior year, and parents have said that the kids had to relearn the algebra from a few years before in order to be prepared for the SAT. I've actually read this advice often enough to have asked this question myself to several experts over the past year or so. So here's the plan we came up with. My son's a good tester and kind of enjoys the game of it, kind of like Lisa's story. We plan to connect his PSAT scores to the Khan Academy this summer and have him do the personalized lessons that it will give him based on his weaker points. And depending on how he does on some practice tests, he may take an SAT around the same time as the PSAT his sophomore year. And if he isn't getting an amazing score, then he'll just take the PSAT, which is standard for a lot of the advanced students at his school. And again, he'll just use that information to prep more later on. So I guess that's the idea. There's no question here. I just felt like I should call in because I just connected with the previous question so much. Thanks for all that you do.
Awesome. And I really wanted to play this question for a couple reasons. One is, I think it's really important that what's that saying, Lisa? There's more than one way to skin a cat. I think I got it right.
I know. Wow, man, you're just like harsh on the animals.
Yeah, that really sounds bad. It was coming out my mouth and it was skin a cat. Why would you want to skin a cat? Doesn't sound good.
Yeah, there's whole other problems there, but
yeah.
Go
on. but I think it's important to and so I wanted to sort of elevate this to say that there's a lot of things where there's different approaches. I'll give you another example. I'm really big on like the thorough visit. When you visit a college, but I have had families that say, but I have a limited time and I want to see a lot of places. And, sometimes a short exposure to a lot of them, especially as a first visit, sometimes that can make sense. There's different things like that there are multiple approaches. So I wanted to say that. I like the fact that she is going to see how it's going and not force it and push it if it's not going well. So I want to say that. But I do also want to say this. I do not think starting in 9th grade is the plan for most people.
Right.
Lisa, you know this, but we had like 26 students that have 1,500 SAT or 35 ACT. And none of them started in 9th grade. None of them. So you don't have to do this to get a really high score.
Right.
I'm also not a believer. This is something you'll hear the college admission officers say. And I believe this, that test prep should not be an extracurricular activity. And sometimes in these Facebook groups, it's kind of like that's the culture, like every single thing revolves around that. If you have a unique kid who is scoring extremely high, you're seeing that in middle school scoring and this, that, the other, then that's an exception.
Right. That's great. Mm-hmm.
It may work for them, but I also know other kids like that you can get the benefit of raising your scores without doing all this formal stuff that early as well. Right. Just by doing lots of different math problems and like reading widely and wisely, your scores are going to naturally go up in a context of natural learning. Right. And so that is really, I'm more of an advocate of that approach, but I did want to elevate the fact that there are other approaches. And I would also say, the one point that was brought up was, well, you can forget your Algebra 2 and there's a lot of Algebra 2 on there. But most kids are going to still do some prep. And if you've learned it, I find it comes back pretty quickly.
Right.
And it's not only a math test only. Like the evidence-based reading and writing is on that test too. And your skills are getting better as you get more and more exposed, especially like into some of the AP curriculum and IB curriculum, some of that higher level stuff. That's really improving you on that side of the test. So it wouldn't be the approach that I would use, but I'm not here to say that it can't work for some people. Any thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, I definitely think if you have like a kid who's really gifted at math and reading, maybe they're interested in doing it, why not try it? I also think you don't want to burn a kid out, and like elevate the status of the test, because that's going to make them, by the time they take the test in 11th grade, they're going to be so sick of it. And it's so much emotion and stuff is built around it that might actually impair their performance a little bit, because, it's too much anxiety, too much pressure. So you just kind of have to be careful with things like that. I
also don't like to send the idea to kids that test testing is so important.
Right.
Like, I know this sounds purist, but I really would like to put the focus on learning and that testing be a byproduct. Now, don't get me wrong. You take that to the extreme and you're like, why do test prep at all? Like, no, of course, I am a believer that doing some test prep makes sense for the overwhelming majority of kids. So I'm not trying to take that to an extreme, but I feel like anytime you're starting something like that 4 years just into high school, you are sort of sending a message of this thing is super important. So let's start really, really early. And I actually don't think that's a message that I think is, advisable to send. Now, there are exceptions. And sometimes people are really are going after that national merit. And they want to go because some of the schools can get super generous. My experience, though, is that overwhelmingly the majority of people that get the national merit, they don't want to go to the schools that give the awards. They give the big awards, but there are exceptions, and Linda has pointed this out. Coming from a more of a rural background in her area, there are a lot of people that sort of rely on that, getting that national merit and targeting the schools that get really, really generous for that. And so it can be a financial strategy for some. So it is just important to mention that there's some complexity here.
And I will say, and I know that some of my younger two kids did test prep for private school admissions. And I honestly think that prep filled in the gaps of, because education through COVID has been kind of crazy. And I think it kept them at or above grade level and it filled in what they had missed. And so for that, I mean, I think that put them in a better place for the next year, but hopefully our education won't be as interrupted and, kids will be learning what they need to learn when they're supposed to be learning it. And they won't need to rely on test prep or tutor in that way to make up for things that they don't get in the school system.
Yeah, that's an important point. I'm having a conversation with the family I'm in California working with right now, whether to test prep or not, because it's really, really obvious that the student, all the schools that the student likes are test optional. And he's a student who he may be able to get his scores to the point where they're worth submitting, but he may not. He's like one of those ones that's right on the cusp, and he's super busy. So do we do it or do we not? It's like one of those ones where it's like, really, you could make the case either way. But one of the points I did bring up in favor of it is there can be some buttressing of your academic skills. It's not only just prepping for the test. One of the things as the material has gotten sort of a little bit more closer aligned now to subject matter, it can be a way of, strengthening that foundation. And one thing you do know about math is, I've seen this over and over and over working with kids, if you don't get an absolute rock solid algebra foundation, then you're going to really struggle and you're done. Like in pre-calc and I've seen really, really smart kids struggle in pre-calc and calc because everybody labels stuff Algebra 1 because I guess that's the good label to have. But some teachers literally cover 60% of the full Algebra 1 curriculum with the Algebra 1 moniker on it. Algebra is the foundation for the rest of the math that a student is going to do for the rest of their life. So if your Algebra 2 skills have gotten weaker, then going back and solidifying your Algebra 2 base is only going to help you in school, in pre-calc, in calc, and beyond. So to me, that's actually another reason for not worrying about taking the test right after Algebra 2. You need that foundation to be rock solid.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, in North Carolina here, I mean, we're still having big teacher shortage problems. And so, like last year, Sonia didn't have a math 1, which is essentially like sort of like Algebra 1 teacher for 5 months. So, I mean, obviously, she can't teach herself math. She's not like some people could, but that's not her strength. Though. And I work with both my North Carolina students that I work with right now have struggled in math because they didn't have teachers and kind of were forced, like their teacher left and they had to switch to the virtual school and they didn't learn that way. And so they've been playing catch up. So, I mean, in that sense, like, going on Khan Academy and reviewing all that stuff and using some of the test prep resources might help a kid. But I know that's not the situation that Rebecca is in. Her kids sounds
Yeah,
like they're doing
but here's what I'll
okay.
say. That's not just a North Carolina thing either. That's pretty widespread. And we probably haven't talked enough about just the teacher shortage right now and how teachers are completely dispirited. And I mean, it's pretty bad across the country. And then you couple that with the effects of COVID and kids being behind a screen, you know, for some places. Some places are really strict on COVID too, like really, really strict. You know, I just got back from this trip to the Pacific Northwest. And one of the schools we visited, Lewis and Clark, I'll mention the name. I looked in the classroom. Every single kid has the full KN5 mask on. And so some places were really strict and they weren't coming back, where some places opened up, and that's obviously controversial, and I'm not taking any positions on that. But the point I'm making is some people really lost a lot of time in classroom instruction.
Yeah. So that's going to be interesting to see how this plays out with the ACT and SAT scores over the next few years, you know, coupled with the adaptive testing on the SAT. I feel like it's going to be kind of interesting, you know, if a kid misses an easy one because their teacher didn't show up for 3 months and they do know the hard stuff, they're never going to get a chance to do the hard stuff on that test. So,
you know, there are some decent models out there, I think, so far of simulating the test, but we really don't know, because anytime something's new,
right,
there are always growth pains or whatever. You know, you know this, Lisa, but I did professional business sales for 6 years, and with 2 Fortune 500 companies. And I remember once in the early to mid 90s, and I remember on one occasion when I worked for Paychex. I worked for Paychex and Dun & Bradstreet. So when I worked for Paychex once, I remember visiting this accountant, because we worked with accountants a lot. And this, we'd go work with the accountant, and the accountant would send us to the clients. So I remember going by to see this accountant, and he was a pretty good accountant. He used to send me a lot of business. So we had this whole brand new product that we were supposed to get out and roll it out and talk about how great it was. And so I was really excited about this meeting, because this guy had a really big practice. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to wow him with this product, and he's going to send me to 15 of his clients, and I'm going to ching cash in. And so I go out and I do the big dog and pony show, the big presentation. And he's like, Mark, this looks great, but my experience is every new product has 2 years to work out the bugs. Come back and talk to me about it in 2 years. No, but in the back of my mind, I was like, he's right. There's always stuff to get worked out. And I brought that up just in the context of the digital SAT.
That's going to be fun.
Especially because they're saying that it's going to be normed exactly like the old one. And I don't know how they're going to be able to pull that off. It's such a different test. Well, you know what? Before we close this is a good time for me to mention something that I've been wanting to mention. It's kind of along these lines about how stuff changes. So do you remember, Lisa, I don't know, a year and a half ago, it was a really big story. The fact that the ACT was going to allow you to go and just take a right.
Whatever happened with that?
It went away. So
it just disappeared,
disappeared, and I've never announced it on the podcast. I announced that this was supposed to be this game changer, and it was controversial for those listeners who may not be following it. So the ACT had this big announcement, and it was also going to be a big moneymaker. But their point was, okay, if you don't know, there's 4 sections to the ACT. You have an English, reading, science, and math section. They were going to let you go just take a science section. And their argument was
it was going to be computerized, right? I mean, it was, also.
Yeah. And it was the point is, look, you could be in and out of there in 40, I mean, maybe they didn't quite say that because it's still instructions, but in and out super fast, not that much of your time. Why keep taking the whole test already if you're low in one section? And so you could sort of see the appeal of that. Right. You can raise your score by just going in and doing one section rather than 4. But then there was a lot of blowback about how it was going to this is just going to privilege the privilege even more. And anyway, there never was ever a big announcement of, guess what, we've decided not to do it, but it's just kind of fizzled. And so I've been talking to some leading experts, and they just say it's just fizzled. So could it get resurrected again? Possibly. But I felt the need to come back a couple years later and say that big thing.
That never happened. Yeah.
But it's also a good example of what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Of how like stuff has kinks in it and it starts moving through and you know, you work it out in the system and then, there you go.
Well, and I think the ACT is having problems being fully computerized because I've heard this from test prep coaches. And then, that's just really cumbersome and awkward. And one of our students the other day was taking it. It was a computerized ACT at her school. It just crashed on her. Couldn't get back into it. No one knows when she's going to get to take it again, and so it's kid like prepped and got herself all psyched up. And then bam, it disappears. So,
well, I think the only the tests are in trouble. I mean, you heard Columbia not too long ago, once again, not going with the test. I think the only way they're going to be able to pull it off, and they might do this, is to financially incentivize high schools to offer it in school settings. Like if the College Board, I don't know if they could pull this off, but if they gave like schools a cut of the money for you administering it and blah, 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 they could appeal to the need for people to have some more cash in the coffers. And that's the only way that I think that they're, that's just me speculating. Listen, this is speculation, everybody. This is not me. Like, I read this story with this in-depth reporting and this is going on. But that's, I think, the only thing is I think about, like, how are they going to not survive is not the right word. How are they going to thrive? Will there ever be a resurgence of the test again? I'm inclined to say no. But if it does happen, I think that's the way it...
Right.
That's the way it would happen. I mean, the only other possibility is quite a few schools come back and say their research is showing that we're not able to admit kids without the test who are to excel. But I don't think that's going to happen. I had one school say that to me. I'm not going to say who they are. And I pushed back. It was on my California trip with 9 schools. I pushed back and said, well, Caltech just said they're doing really, really well. So is it possible that you may just need to learn how to read a file better?
They must have loved your helpful feedback.
No, the good thing is the person said, that's exactly my point. Because it's like a person pushing back against faculty.
Right.
Admissions is like, we're just new at this. We just need to get better at it. It doesn't mean that it can't be done. So I think that's highly unlikely. And I think that, otherwise, but when I think about like, what could it possibly take? I feel like that ship has almost sailed now. And especially as we go into the birth dearth and all this enrollment cliff, like it's a proven fact, test option will get you more applications.
Right.
So schools doing things that will get them less applications. That's not really something I see them going for right now. And then all their peers aren't doing it either.
Mm-hmm.
But they really do believe that they can make a decision without it too. It's not just spin.
Right.
So we'll see what happens. This isn't supposed to be a conversation of will the SAT survive, but you know what it's like when you talk to me. It's like we go off on some tangent.
It is, but if you have a 9th grader prepping for the SAT, I think that's a legitimate point of what is it going to be like when they're in 11th grade and how is it going to be accepted or not? Because things are changing pretty rapidly.
Well, I mean, I think that any score you bank won't be invalidated. Like it will still be, there's a difference between is it necessary versus will it be, I don't think it's going to be, okay, this thing's obsolete, so it's a relic and we don't count. And that's not going to happen. But I do think one last point I do want to make, it's kind of the same point almost for me meeting with Sonia. Like, and I've made this point before, like, when is time to start the college process? Some of it is, when does your kid want to do it? So when I go back to this test prep thing, there's a kid that might find this fun, like solving a Rubik's Cube or do something like that. To me, that's very different than dragging Johnny in to go do his Saturday morning 8 a.m. testing that he just has to do because you just really believe that, this is going to make him stronger. So if you got a kid that really wants to do it in moderation, I don't have a problem with it. It's just that I know that you don't need to do it to score well.
Right,
And it's
right,
not the path that
right.
I see people do that do score well. So that's all.
All right.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments and chiming in. And it's really important to know there's that word again. There's more than one way to
skin a cat.
Skin a cat. Somebody's got to come up with something better than that.
Yeah, I'm sure there are cliches. I just can't think of them.
Find me one, I'll use it because it's uncomfortable coming out of my mouth. All right. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Rebecca.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
All right, friends, time for the final part of my interview with Gloria and Terry Crawford. They are the founders of Initialview, the edtech company that was started about a decade ago to help colleges discern whether applicants are truly who they say they are, and to give applicants a chance to let schools get to know them a little bit beyond just the paperwork. Final part's up now. Listen and enjoy. Are you hearing from colleges that you can be part of the solution, or solution is not the right word, but part of the plan, part of the plan with the rise of AI on the domestic side? So, because I heard your answer and it felt, I won't say theoretical, right. But I was just asking do you see a role for Initialview domestically in response to ChatGPT as evidenced by colleges contacting you more, or is there not really been a correlation there?
There's definitely been a correlation. I talk to admissions officers on a weekly basis, and everybody has been, just like during COVID, there was definitely a moment where everybody reached out and said, we got to talk about recruitment in a new way. Now we already get these proctored writing samples for you from the international market. Should we start asking domestic students for that? Should we, you're already sending these elevator pitches. Like, how can we utilize that even more? People are very eager when I've sent them the elevator pitches that have come through this year. Like, thank you so much for this. Like, we're looking at how we can implement this in training our reviewers in a different way. Now that ChatGPT is there, everyone's talking about it. So yes, we have some upcoming meetings that are exciting about what's to come. Love that some deans and directors have been excited about talking to us about making plans and pivoting as quickly as they can. And, it's a hard world. Admissions is a pretty conservative industry in terms of trying new things. We've been kind of at it for more than a decade of trying to convince these 300-year-old institutions to do something a little bit differently. But I think ChatGPT is an impetus. It is really forcing. We've had these conversations for 10 years, right? But now I think admissions offices realize we got to do something different. And COVID helped, honestly, because it made people more comfortable with technology and more comfortable with okay, we can do audio, we can do video, and we can do it at mass, and we're able to actually provide more information to more people than we've ever had before. So I'm excited. I'm excited about it.
I think COVID really helped because it just shook up the whole model. I mean, they couldn't travel and people couldn't travel to them. And so they had to really build up their virtual platforms really quickly. And a lot of them were shocked at how well attended they were. And to a person, there's not a single professional that I have not interviewed that sort of has said some version of, oh my goodness, why in the world were we not doing this before? People don't even have to leave their home. It's such a great access answer. We were expecting everybody to hop a plane, hotel, airfare, rent a car, meals, visit us all the time. And we are definitely going to keep up our virtual programming. And, I attended one event that traditionally had been a breakfast for 6 schools that traveled together, and deans and directors. And one of the dean director level people said, I'd love to be with you in person, but to be honest, we never had 875 people at our breakfasts, and that's how many of you are here right now. So I think that really shook them up. And then with the changes that everybody's expecting with affirmative action, I think have schools in a very strategic mindset of trying to get ahead of the curve and looking for ways that they can still maintain their diversity if some of the tools are taken away from them. So I think that I'm seeing more innovation than ever from admission offices, because what they did for the most part, they felt was pretty successful during COVID. Most of them are shocked to see their numbers rise. I mean, schools thought their numbers were going to plummet, and they went up now, especially on the more selective side. Of course, regional publics, community colleges, and under-resourced and less prestigious private schools. Totally different. So my last question before I put you on the hot seat, because everybody goes on the hot seat, every first-time guest. So you mentioned the $22, the domestic, CBOs, rural, immigrant families. Can anybody just sign up for your domestic, initial view for $22? And what does that look like? Because I think I know our listeners enough to know for $22 to add a video and signal a couple stars to places of interest, like that's a lunch for me. I'll count me in. So what does that look like?
All you have to do is go to initialview.com/elevator pitch. And you just need a computer or a phone. You need to use a Chrome browser, and that's all you need. And you can record as many times as you want before you feel like, okay, my final version is ready to send, and then you can send to as many schools as you want. You can even come back. You could send to one school first, knowing this is going to be really helpful for this specific application, but then you can come back and add schools as you go without any extra fees.
Yeah, and I think the fact that you got that Slate integration is really important. Just knowing how schools think, like that's very important to make it user-friendly for them. I don't want a whole bunch of extraneous videos coming at them, but that's going to integrate right into their natural file reading system. And so I don't know if that was your idea or that came from them or whatever that came from, but that was like another brilliant stroke there.
That was a right place, right time thing.
Yeah, another right place, right time. We were basically told, as Berkeley was about to start using our interviews many years ago, Berkeley's a big school. And Amy Jarek, who was the head of undergrad admissions at that time, she went to Alexander, who's the famous entrepreneur that started Slate, and basically said, we're about to use you guys, and we're about to use you guys. You guys figure out the integration. And that integration has been everything. I mean, it is crazy. This is, for those of you that are maybe not familiar with Slate, or don't appreciate this aspect of it. It is the reading software used by almost all of the selective schools in the U.S. I mean, there's only a handful of exceptions to that. Like almost all of the top schools use this reading software. And so if you're integrated with that, where your materials automatically go and automatically appear in the student file next to the transcript, next to the test scores, next to the essays, like that is a incredible ease of use for the admissions officer. And we can retell this story about the integration, and we know what we went through and how crazy that was. And, the years of working with a handful of admissions officers to work on this product. But what's really fun for us is that we'll talk to junior admissions officers, and they'll just talk about it as being part of their process. They'll be like, so I looked at the transcript, I looked at the initial view, I looked at the essays, and they won't even, the blood, sweat, and tears that went into kind of forming that, and we'll often laugh with admissions officers who are alongside us at the very beginning. We'll be like, can you believe, what it's become? And now they have junior colleagues that just kind of see it as like, oh yeah, here's the SAT score, here's the initial view. And that's all because of that being integrated in this software that is used internally in admissions offices. And we had no idea that it would ever become that it would be that critical of a step for us.
And I'll go one step further. It's not just selective schools. So there's over 1,000 Common App schools, wide range of selectivities. Last I heard, Slate has over 1,400 college partners. So over 400 more than Common App itself. Yeah. So they're into multiple levels of selectivity in terms of who they serve. So That's listen, right. I'm about to put you on the hot seat, but is there anything that you haven't shared that you want to share before we move off the initial view conversation?
I just think, of course I'm biased because I'm one of the co-founders, but I think about my kids all the time and what I want them to do. And there was a family conversation at dinner once when our kids said, so when we apply to college, do we need to do initial view? And we're like, we have been prepping, your whole life has been preparing for initial view. And because I do think it's not just part of the admissions process, it is part of learning. It's a part of being like, it's so great because, you know, people are concerned about cottage industry happening because of initial view. And I'm like, well, if the cottage industry is helping students find their voice, find how to be compelling, do a proper interview where they're actually having a real conversation, these are skills that are lifelong skills that they need. So I love what we do. I feel like it is good for the process. It is good for the student. It is good for the family. And so that's my last little hurrah.
Awesome. Nothing like a true believer. Love it. Love it. All right. First question. What's it like working with your spouse all the time?
Not everybody can do it.
Who wants to go? Yeah.
Don't jump to go first, everyone.
But we love it. Well, at least I love it. Don't you love it?
Yes. I love it too. I love it too. Maybe I'll be a little strategic because I want to see what my wife says first. But I absolutely. I absolutely love it too. I mean, you know, we're midday here. You know, my wife and I, you know, we got to prepare together for this conversation. A buddy of mine who works at an investment bank, travels a fair amount. You know, Gloria and I, like, we go to conferences together. We get to travel to conferences together. Like, I think conferences for us are much more fun than they are typically for other people, because this buddy of mine that works in investment bank is like, so you get to go on these kind of little retreat quasi business trips with your wife. and we're like, yeah, like we do. And, you know, and of course you have to get along, but, you know, if you're a married couple, you should probably get along too. So you know, you have to kind of know your strengths, and we definitely have kind of different strengths, although we're always batting around ideas. I mean, we're constantly doing that. I mean, I'll give you an example. Like, I almost never send an email without showing it to Gloria. Like, she always like, yep, sounds good. I mean, and vice versa. Like, we're always critiquing each other's the pitch. You know, I'll also say that there's a lot of memories together and kind of creating a business. You know, we enjoy our clients. We really have lots of friends in the admissions world, and, you know, clients are admissions officers. They're also counselors. They're also, you know, the students that we interact with. Like, all of that's really fun, and we get to do that together, and that's super exciting. And really pleasurable. I mean, one thing I would say, you know, one rule that we have that I think is that we always kind of say this is kind of what allows us to do it. I mean, we of course have a family too. You know, we want to spend time with our kids. They're, you know, in high school, and we all know that they're all about to go to college, and we want to savor this time that we have with them. One of the things that we do is that we made a commitment that on Sunday we don't work, and that means we don't talk about initial view, because otherwise, like, we would just always be like, oh, I got to email this person. Oh, did you talk about this, or did you deal with this issue? You know, like we would just find ourselves being swallowed up by it. And we do. I mean, we enjoy talking about what we do. I mean, we think it's fundamentally interesting. It's much more interesting than when I used to be a lawyer. You know, so, but if we didn't have this rule that we take a break on Sunday, you know, and then we would just have family time. You know, we get up knowing we're not working that day. We go to church. We typically go out to lunch afterwards and relax in the afternoon. You know, that's been really, really critical. It's also often hard because, like, we might have something we know we want to. Oh no, I need to respond. I want to, you know, show that I'm being responsive. But we have to be like, nope, got to wait until Monday for that. So that's you know, one word of advice. I mean, I would actually encourage, if someone like wants to work with their spouse, I would typically encourage it. But you also have to kind of be able to block out time where you're not talking about the business.
The Chick-fil-A philosophy: take Sunday off.
Yeah. I mean, it does take work, right? It does take work. Just like, you know, in a marriage, it takes work for, you know, you to have a happy marriage. And, you know, it helps to have your interests aligned. for us, we were like, our livelihood depends on us being able to get along here. So our kids being able to go to college relies on us being able to get along. But the other thing is, the reason why I said not everybody can do it, some people get together in a marriage because we realize that we complement each other well. And in that is the case for Terry and me. Like, our skill sets are very complementary. So that makes it easy where I can be like, this is something you're good at, so you're going to do this. And I'm good at this, so I'll take this part of the formula or the package. So yeah, when your interests are aligned and when you realize that you allow the other person to be good at what they are good at and not step on their toes, you're able to have a lot more synergies and work well together.
Cool. How do you relax? How do you unwind? How do you chill?
There is.
I mean, I go for a run.
Yes, Terry goes on a run, and there's always a desire to run together. So I will sometimes ride a bicycle next to him because I just don't run.
No, Terry's hardcore. He runs with Rick Clark, who's like hardcore runner.
They are hardcore.
I will agree. Rick Clark is hardcore. That's right.
Yeah, I'm not that. I don't do that. I prefer to cook or listen to music or things like that. But out of the desire to, make sure our interests are aligned, occasionally I will go on a bike ride next to Terry so that we can have time together.
What's one misperception about China? You've obviously been in China for quite some time. What's a misperception Americans have about China?
Well, here's one thing. This is a little bit of a soapbox for me, but I wish that all Americans understood that the fact that students from China want to come to the U.S., that dynamic should really be encouraged and is an incredible sign of the U.S.'s ability to attract the best and the brightest. And that is very important for the U.S. as a country to lean into that. There is typically people from China, they will come here and go to college, and then they will stay here. And the U.S. benefits from that tremendously. The dynamic of the best and the brightest wanting to go to China, that does not exist. And I think that kind of as Americans, we need to understand that dynamic, and that people in China, they are literally, I mean, they vote with their dollars and, or yuan, if you will, but in sending their kids away for 4 years to go to college, very, very expensive, even more expensive for them than it is for Americans to send our kids to college. And it's very expensive for Americans. But then they will also vote with their feet, and that they want to, the best and the brightest want to move here. And that is an incredible advantage for the U.S. that needs to be understood and needs to be honored. There are geopolitical concerns and spying concerns, and that is at the very, dealt with at a certain level. But the by far the biggest trend and dynamic are the best and brightest from China wanting to move to the U.S. And that's just so valuable. We as Americans, we've really got to understand it. I have many more things about China, but Gloria, I should let you talk about China too.
I mean, you said what I wanted to say, which is I think we observe people wanting to come. And, as much as the numbers, people being concerned about the numbers of applicants going down, I think a lot of that had to do with COVID, more so than anything. But we continue to observe that even if they don't say out loud that they would like to leave, they are moving with their feet. And you know how ads will pop up for people. I think the biggest ads that come up in China are about immigration and about study abroad. And that is an indication of what people feel.
I just changed Canada. I grew up in Canada, and I couldn't believe my sister is still over there told me the percentage of Canada that's Asian. I couldn't believe it. I was shocked. It was so different than when I grew up. But Canada's been very welcoming, and so they've done the same thing. They've gone to the Torontos and the UBCs and the Waterloos, and Canada's had a very welcome, immigration policy. And it's really, they would say, changed the country for the better. So last question. What's your best advice for, you can pick any of these groups or all of them, students, parents, college counselors?
One of the things that we have done with our children is actually try as much as we can to have family dinner. And part of family dinner has been what we do. I'm sure many of you families have done this, a highlight, low light kind of conversation. And we still to this day do it. In fact, my 17-year-old was like, I think we're pretty good at having conversations where we don't have to do this. But we do actually ask our kids to go around and say, what was the worst part of the day, the best part of the day, and something that you challenge yourself in. And I think that's my advice. Do that and do that often. Have lots of conversations. I think we get lost in this process of like, oh my gosh, it's so hard to get into college. And we lose kind of what's important. And we are trying really hard to look like everybody else, whether that's like our grades or our test scores or, even our EC list. Like, what are we supposed to do? Which activity is going to make us look more impressive? What we really want is that conversation of like, what makes you happy? What makes you sad? What challenges did you go through today? Or what challenge do you want to make sure that you're taking each day? So my advice is have lots of conversations. I mean, our slogan at Initialview for a while was life is not a test, it's a conversation. And I really kind of stand by that. Have lots of conversations and have them often.
Awesome. Terry, on that one last thing?
Yeah, one of the things that I'll say to parents is I want to reassure parents that applying to college is not an easy or straightforward process, and there are many reasons why that's so, but I just want to reassure you that can be really challenging, and there can be this feeling like that, oh, other people understand it and then I don't. When we came back to the U.S. and we were, like my wife said, we were COVID refugees, we made some mistakes with our oldest son's, with the classes that he was taking, and they weren't optimized, for selective college admissions. And it's a little bit crazy that we made that mistake because we're insiders. We can literally go and ask admissions officers like, hey, how do you look at this class? But we didn't know. And I want to, the example of even us not knowing to kind of reassure parents that it's complicated and that it's challenging and that there are nuances and you have to kind of think through different, bring some principles, but then you have to make decisions without 100% complete information, and they're very expensive decisions. So that is very challenging. I also want to say that there is undue influence within the first year admissions category of things, and there are many, many ways, whether it's you're transferring, whether it's that you go into an honors program and then go to graduate school, that really reduce the importance of where you get in when you're applying as a first year. That is kind of heightened. There's heightened focus on that because of U.S. News and World Report, and because that dictates so much of the rankings, and because rankings are so important to numbers of apps that you get, and that then feeds into a president. How important is that president and his or her impact on the college? But there really are many, many, many other ways to, maybe you realize a little bit later that you're a math person. There are ways to go and take more math classes and to kind of get back on that train. You realize later, like, oh, I'm actually I want to be pre-med. Later on, you can go and take more classes and then apply to med school. I wanted to get into this really selective school and I was not able to do so. Well, if you go and do really, really well your first year, you can actually typically transfer. And one of the blessings we have of living in the US is that there are really multiple pathways to the same end goal. Many, many, many other countries are not like this. Most of the Asian countries are just your future is kind of determined by really one or two tests, and then that's it. But in the U.S., you can discover a passion later in life, and then really go after that in a way that you wouldn't have been able to, when you were 17 or 18 or 19 years old. So I wanted to kind of maybe reassure parents that even if this first year admissions doesn't work out the way that you had hoped and dreamed, that there really are other ways to get to maybe even to exactly the place that you dreamed to get to.
That's a great way to stop. I love to end dialing down the stress. Thank you so much, Gloria and Terry. This has been awesome. And just share the website one last time.
Initialview.com/elevator pitch.
Thank you. We'll be in touch.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Thanks
It's been
for
great.
having us, Mark.
Oh, my pleasure. Take care. On Thursday's episode, the future of fair admissions. And this is a conversation Susan and I are going to have about something that was run by James Murphy, the senior policy analyst for educational reform. And we've done a first part series some time ago, and it's a 3-part series. And this one looks at legacy preferences. And so Susan and I will be talking about legacy preferences. Are they right? Are they not right? Where is it going? Is it going to be outlawed? Really robust discussion I think you're going to enjoy. After that, Lisa and I will continue a 4-part series we're doing, looking at 7 groups that often feel disillusioned with the results in the college admission process. And we'll be looking at reasons 3 and 4, groups 3 and 4. And hopefully by learning this information, you will no longer be disillusioned. Our interview is with Andre Phillips, the Director of Admissions at UW-Madison. The topic is Understanding Wisconsin-Madison. It's part 2 of 4. And the College Spotlight, Kevin Newton is back. This time, Understanding New Zealand Universities. And friends, in this decision-making time, please always remember that college is a match to be made. It is not a prize to be won. See you on Thursday, friends. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you'll get every single episode as soon as it is released. If you're interested, there are a few ways you can really support our podcast. You can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can help us pay our staff and our expenses by donating on our website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. I'm the producer of the podcast, but we have a fantastic team of 15. Shout out to our co-host, Dr. Lisa Ruff, Dr. David Williams, Linda Depker, Susan Tree, Vince Garcia, and Julia Esquivel. And to our substitute co-host, Sylvia Borgo. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs are from Kimberly Blass. Lily Parikh manages our Instagram. Our image editor is Talha Khan. Joy Stucker does our website episode updates. And our webmaster is Stalianos Dimitriou. And if you want to have a coaching session with Lisa, Linda, or me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you have a question you want us to answer, or if you have a recommended resource or article you think we should discuss, just send it to questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. Our favorite method is for you to record your own voice at speakpipe.com/YCBK. By the way, check out our website, where you'll find lots of content that is not on any podcast app. Our website is yourcollegeboundkid.com. If you want to learn about other hot admissions topics, follow us on Twitter at YCBK Podcast. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting again with you every single Monday and Thursday.